historically, when when Deflategate first started, there were all kinds of people who wanted Brady punished. You turn on any radio show and everybody wanted to punish, all, including the current athletes in the league. They wanted to punish. They're tired of the Patriots cheating, et cetera, et cetera. And then it was like all of a sudden it turns into strange bedfellows. And all of a sudden guys who were in the league who hated the Patriots, who had come out against Brady. I can remember I can remember at least one of the guys who used to play for the Jets and then plays for the Patriots. He was on The Biggest Loser. His name escapes me now, but a big offensive tackle. I can remember seeing him on ESPN, and he was like, at first he was like, the Patriots have cheated again. This is what they've done. This is what they always do. I can't, I won't defend it. But by the time Roger Goodell started really going after Brady, he was like, whoa, you can't go after Brady like this. And then all of a sudden he became a defender of Brady. And so many guys around the league had become a defender of Brady. It's not that they don't think Brady cheated. It's like thinking that OJ didn't have the knife. No, everybody knows OJ had the knife. Everyone knows Brady cheated. But if you're a player, the flip side, from the ownership perspective, they want to lay their thing down and say, hey, we're willing to go after anybody. And from Tom down, we're going to take Tom down on a weak case, on some real nonsense. We will take the NFL Players Association. We will drag y'all out into the deep water financially and drown you because we've already spent about $12 to $15 million on this case. Meanwhile, the NFLPA, they've spent another $4 or $5 million. So we got about a $20 million case so far over absolute pure nonsense. Pure nonsense and egos. That's what it's spent about $20 million talking about deflated footballs. But the NFL owners know that they're eventually going to win once they go deeper and deeper into the water because the NFL players are going to run out of money before the NFL owners do. That's the bottom line, guys. So who's going to lose the appetite for this discussion? It's either going to be you or it's going to be them. That's one scenario. The other scenario, like I said, is this thing with Roger Goodell and getting the whole stigma, in a league that's 70 or 80% black. You can't take the issue, or you can't have the perception exist that you are disproportionately punishing them. Well, now after I go after Brady over a really weak case, well, now all y'all should be nervous. Now all y'all should be nervous because if I go after Brady for this, for some of the stuff some of you other guys are doing, I'll absolutely kill you. We'll kill you. We'll fine you. We'll run you out of the league. We'll do whatever. We'll have carte blanche. So that's why they're doing it. That's the big. That's kind of the big concept behind this whole thing as to what's motivating these folks. It's no longer about deflated footballs. It's about egos, control, and perception that they are now trying to create. Jumping subjects. Let me go to my man Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning retired today. And I must say, well, first of all, I need to come clean. And I need to say that I am a crier, and I found myself crying today at a couple of points during the press conference, which I felt kind of silly about because I'm sitting in my house, I'm sitting in my office, got a home office, I'm sitting there watching the press conference and absolutely boo-hooing and sobbing as I'm watching him retire. It was fabulously done. As usual, Peyton says all the right stuff, does all the right stuff, says all the right stuff. There's no buts in this for me. I thought the only unfortunate thing was that amongst all the positive things that were said about him over the past 48, 72 hours, you knew at some point somebody was going to bring up all the nonsense that has recently been brought up over the past month or so since the Super Bowl over the HGH thing, and then this thing with Tennessee and this athletic trainer that supposedly happened 20 years ago. And I guess my comment relative to all of this is that we can't be surprised as a society when we look at the landscape of politics and we ask ourselves as a society, how do we end up with some of the weak choices that we have across the board, weak choices or bad choices that many of us from either side of the party spectrum, Democrats or Republicans, none of us are particularly proud of some of the choices that we have as, as candidates for public office. And I think we've got to apply it to sports when we look at a guy like Peyton Manning. And so when we ask ourselves, why are there no great candidates for public office? Well, because people don't want to face the scrutiny. People don't want to face the scrutiny, and people don't want to have every scab on their face, ripped open and picked over and have shots coming from them from all angles, from social media, from rumors to innuendo. People saying stuff about your kids, your family, your wife, your this, your that. And it's like, well, what, after a while, it's like, well, what the hell? Why am I even subjecting myself to this? So when we look at it as a society, and we say to ourselves, how do we get to the point where we've got guys who are on stage talking about the size of their hands and alluding to the size of their, of their penises as they're running for public office? Well, we're not leaving them with great choices. And on the Democratic side, I don't know that we necessarily have the best candidates there either. So from both sides, I think many of us are looking at the political spectrum this year and saying, wow, how come we didn't end up with better choices? We have to be saying that. If we bill ourselves as the world's superpower, and some of the best and brightest people in the world and the world's superpower, and we're going to protect everybody with our military, and we're the world's richest country and all this other good stuff. If all those things are true, then how come there are no really good candidates who want to be in charge of this great thing called the U.S.? And I'm not saying the U.S. is not great in many ways, but I'm just saying how come the candidate choices are not great? And the reason why the candidate choices are not great from both sides is that nobody wants the scrutiny and the nonsense that you have to go through. And how I draw an analogy to that is I look at a guy like Peyton Manning. His body of work over 20 years has been nothing but stellar, absolutely stellar. Yet, even at his retirement press conference, he doesn't get a pass. Nobody gets a pass. Now, they didn't sit there and grill him. There was one, for the part that I saw, I didn't see the entire press conference, but for the part of the press conference I saw, there was only one person who asked a question. And she did not ask a follow-up question, nor was she given the opportunity for a follow-up question. He shut it down. And he went on to Forrest Gump and some other stuff and kind of made light of it, and which I think was a good pull out, and I don't think Peyton's that quick on his feet. I think they obviously had rehearsed this and had the thing kind of planned out. But we've just made it wildly unappealing to go for, to run for public office, and we've made it tough on the guy unnecessarily and taken one shot at him about an incident that I really don't think there's any much question about whether or not it happened. Something happened 20 years ago, for sure. Something happened 20 years ago. At least that's what I believe. Like I said, I believe OJ had the knife and killed some people. I believe Brady deflated some footballs, and I believe Manning probably did something 20 years ago that was less than positive to a female trainer or in front of a female trainer in their locker room. Whether or not you want to call it, horseplay, inappropriate, sexist, whatever it may have been. And I'm not being dismissive of that. I'm a dad of 2 girls myself. But it was 20 years ago, whatever it was. And it wasn't rape, and it wasn't rape, it wasn't molestation, it wasn't anything really, really way over the top. And he already settled with the woman and already paid her out a couple of $100,000. So at some point we got to be able to put this in the rearview mirror. And I just think when people take shots and go after him today and even ask the question, I just think it's really, really tough. What I was thinking about yesterday when I was watching Peyton. He is such an iconic figure. It's not like he's retiring just from the Indianapolis Colts or from Denver. He really is retiring like from the NFL. He's like the most iconic figure. Other than, the only thing that I can really draw an analogy to in my mind is like, other than Michael Jordan in basketball, Like Peyton is that guy. He's the spokesperson. He's the statesman for the NFL. He is like all that in a bag of chips. And then I even, and because I'm a bit of a homer, for sure, but because I'm a lifelong Giants fan, I asked myself last night, I was drawing a complete blank, but it's indicative of the difference between Peyton and Eli. Peyton gets you fired up and gets you inspired and gets you excited about some things. Eli is like watching, paint dry on the wall. There's just nothing that gets you excited or inspired about anything the dude does. But I was watching a special on Manning last night, and I could tell you, if anybody asked me, what number is Peyton Manning? He's 18. And I was sitting there racking my brain in my house. I was like, what number is Eli? Like, I couldn't remember if Eli was, and I knew Eli wasn't 18 because I knew that was his dad's number. And I didn't think he was 12. And then I was like, but I don't think he's 14. And it wasn't like until this morning when I saw a flash of him with a 10 on that I was like, oh, damn, okay, he's 10. And I just said to myself, you know how sad that is for me to be a Giants fan, a lifelong Giants fan. I can still tell you what number Carl Banks was, Jim Burt, Mark Bavaro, Lawrence Taylor, obviously, Van Pelt. I mean, guys just back in the day, obscure guys, Leonard Marshall, guys who weren't, all pros, and they're not all in Canton. I can tell you what all their numbers are. But they had something to get you more inspired than Eli does. Eli just, he just doesn't do it. Just absolutely doesn't do it. But I think the question with Peyton now is, where do the reins go? Where do the reins go, and who becomes the face of the league? I mean, Brady's going to be there, so it's going to be him for a period of time, but then somebody's really got to become that next guy who's running alongside of Brady, and I think that's where the test is over the next couple of years, is who are going to be those guys. And I think the NFL wants to make Wilson that guy. Wilson's the challenge with Wilson is this, and I went off on him last week, but the challenge with Wilson is that Wilson's not a big dude. He is out in Seattle. He's going to say and do the right things, but he's not a big dude. Peyton was a big dude in a big sport that people are so in love with, like the NFL. We want a big leading man. We want a guy who's like 6'6", 6'5", 6'6". He's 250 pounds, 230, 40 pounds. Big dude. That fits with the whole NFL image. It works. And it's a big leading man. He comes into the room. He's always in a jacket and tie. He looks like a leading man. That's where people need to go full circle to Cam after the Super Bowl. That's the opportunity that Cam missed. And that's what Cam doesn't recognize. And that's where he needs to step up his game this summer so that he becomes that guy. And that, I'm going to jump subjects one more time, but he becomes the guy who, kind of like this boy Conor McGregor, who got his behind kicked this past weekend in UFC. After that, he put on his suit. He came out. His face was swollen. He was a little bit beat up. He knew he had gotten his butt kicked, but he stood up and said, hey, I'm still a champion. I'm going to be back. I'm going to live to fight again. And that's where the NFL needs to have their next leader say those same kinds of things and do that same kind of thing. That's where we need Cam to be. So congrats again to Peyton as he retires. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for flying with me this week once again on C-Suite Sports. Go to csuitesports.net. I'm your main man, Mike G, and thank you for riding with me. I'm out. Doing well. How are you?
Okay.